Yeah, that's right. So the wrestling style games are kind of interesting because when we were kind of categorizing all these types of games, we kind of planted the flag of Street Fighter II World Warrior as the archetype, the iPhone of fighting games that just kind of started this revolution in the 90s. And what's interesting is that it was the 2D archetypal setting. It wasn't the 8-way pit fighter, final fight kind of setup or wrestling game setup. It was the Street Fighter one. And I guess if Street Fighter 2 was like a wrestling game, but it was extremely successful, then we would say like, oh, the predecessors were these games instead of Karate Champ and Yar Kung Fu, right? So it's just that these wrestling games never exploded the arcade scene like Street Fighter 2 did. So in a certain sense, these wrestling games are kind of the actual OG, like old school fighting game archetype in a way.
Right.
But it just didn't have that success. We talked about, I think, in the first installment of this podcast about how popularity is an important thing for things to catch on, right? Just because you have this innovative thing that does have a following and people make other versions of it doesn't mean as much if it doesn't have the popularity required to create a new standard. So yeah, the wrestling games, I played a few wrestling games. Remember it was WWF at the time before they turned it into WWE. I remember playing, I forget what game it was. It was on the Super Nintendo, but there's one where you can tag in and out. And I remember
I remember is once again similar style to Mortal Kombat or Pit Fighter.
Oh yeah,
and it was developed by Midway also. Midway at the time made the WWF fighting game.
I think I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
So you had Undertaker and
I remember Undertaker. Yes, I remember this game.
These popular wrestling superstars doing special moves.
Yes. No, I remember
so
this game.
Fireballs and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cool game. And then when I was in the arcades, I also was a big fan of SlamMasters. Capcom designed the game. And then funny thing about that game is that when the game intro plays, there's this character that looks like a main character in the game, but never appears in the game. So I'm like, why does this character even exist, right? But apparently that character still exists in the game's lore. So I'm like, okay, like whoever designed this is pretty philosophical, I guess. Another unique thing about that game is initially the first game was like a wrestling game, and you could play simultaneously of 4 players, like 2v2 in the wrestling ring, right? And you could tag in and out, but the other mode allowed 4 players to play simultaneously.
Yeah.
When the sequel dropped the next year, it shifted the game's direction to a traditional fighting game, just 2D playing. Yeah. Another big change other than the style of the game is in the first iteration, the attack buttons were just one button for attack, one button for jump, and a third button for pinning the opponent to get the 3 count and the win.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. When on the sequel, other than the fact it's a 2D fighting game, now it's like light punch, light kick. And
so they changed
heavy
the button
punch,
scheme.
heavy kick. Yeah.
Okay, so like the first iteration of the game was just like a straight up wrestling game with a pinning button.
Yeah.
And by the second installment, they were basically like, let's just make it like a 2D hold back to block archetypal
same characters, same intellectual property, same developers, but a lot of influence perhaps from their Street Fighter franchise there, where they wanted to maybe experiment, going to a 2D style of the game, I suppose. And that was a pretty interesting take on where it's the same series, but the genre shifts.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to how much people loved the 2D hold back to block archetypal fighting games at the time, right? To the point where you make a game series and then you just completely change the gameplay style on the second version. It's just these were the kinds of games that there were so many of during that time, and I think it's just it just shows that the wrestling games are kind of overshadowed during that time.
And the popularity does matter, right? A little bit off topic, but it featured Haga as a playable character. Haga from Final Fight.
Nice.
So that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
It's from Capcom.
Well, it's Capcom.
So they have all the rights to use that.
Even Marvel,
but that was kind of the start to show Capcom maybe wanted to do their the universe.
Oh, Capcom's universe. Yeah.
So, wow, Hega's in this game. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then later on, eventually, Hega becomes like a fighting game character in Marvel.
Yeah.
Also a Capcom game. And other games have done that too, where, Yoshimitsu from Tekken, he's a Soul Calibur character too.
Oh, yeah.
So fighting games also kind of went through where they thought the franchise universe adds towards the popularity of the game.
Yeah,
too,
of course. Yeah, and the thing is, like you said, it goes through multiple different, fighting game archetypes as well. So you'll have like your favorite characters doing, in completely different systems, and then they have to create a new way of fighting. And I guess one of the big examples, like I guess it's not a fighting game, but having Tifa and Cloud in Air Guys, right? So they're it's like, how do you take these characters from this other franchise and then make them into fighting game characters? And I guess that's what they're doing with 2XKO as well, trying to bring somebody from MOBA into a 2D tag fighter.
Yeah, because Air Guys maybe at the end of production, this is just my assumption, they're like, this is a cool concept, but maybe it's not gonna be so popular. Let's add some popular characters in the mix.
I mean, it's that game is wow. Well, like when we were kind of messing around in that game, I was the whole blocking system and the fact that they have like highs, lows, and mids. It was like
complex.
This is like a big brain game, and just like the way. This is another example of, it's not like, it's definitely more refined and I would say a better game than Dark Edge, but it does have, those elements of the archetypal games that they're trying to cram into an arena perspective. And I think that's where some of the game systems were not very intuitive. And if you go to like Combo Breaker, there are people who love that game and they got really good at that game, and it's like it's definitely like it's a cool game in its own way, right? Yes. But it's definitely its own thing. It's not like anything else, and I don't think there will be anything like Air Guys. I think it's just Air Guys is going to be a unique game from here on out.
Definitely, it's like and Air Guys and Final Fantasy both originally made from Square, and they also made a fighting game called Tobal.
Yeah.